Hi, welcome back to my channel. Today I will walk around St. James in the center of London and tell you the interesting history of this often overlooked royal palace, St. James Palace. The story begins from the Westminster Palace on the north bank of the Westminster Bridge. The Westminster Palace was a royal residence in the Middle Ages. In 1512, a huge fire destroyed the palace, and Henry VIII was left without a residential base in Westminster. To build a new palace, he purchased a large area of land to the north of Westminster Palace and built his new house, Whitehall Palace. It was a massive palace covering the area from the number 10 Downing Street to Scotland Yard, now the Metropolitan Police, and all the way up to Charing Cross. Later, the whole area from the Old Palace of Westminster to the Whitehall legally became the Royal Palace of Westminster. At this point, St. James was still the open space of countryside to the west of Whitehall Palace. From the Middle Ages, the location of St. James Palace was a leper hospital. However, many Westminster clerks rented the house and lived there. During the reign of Henry VIII, there was no leper patient there anymore. The area became a trendy mansion for the richer residents of Westminster. Henry VIII bought the hospital and the surrounding land, turned it into a satellite house to Whitehall Palace. He intended to use it as a nursery house for the heir to the throne, the children of him and Anne Boleyn. St. James Palace officially became the nursery of the royal family and the residence for Prince and Princess of Wales. Actually, even today, Prince Charles is living in Clarence House, which is a part of St. James Palace. Henry VIII also built St. James Park on the land between St. James Palace and the Whitehall Palace. Originally, there were only two gates to the park. One in the east was a gate to the Whitehall, so the king can leave his palace and go see his park. Another in the north connecting directly to the gatehouse of St. James Palace. St. James Park served as a playing ground for the king and his children. St. James Palace was really fully used in the Stuart dynasty. In 1698, a fire destroyed the Whitehall Palace, and the only remains are the banqueting house and the wine cellar. The wine cellar turned into the Ministry of Defense today, and the banqueting house is right next door. Charles I built a magnificent art collection and the largest work by Rubens in the banqueting house. It's open to the public today. Ironically, it was also on the street outside the banqueting house that Charles I was executed in 1664. St. James Park was used by the Stuarts for shooting birds and deer. Every time the royal family received a diplomatic gift of exotic animals, they were put into St. James Park, such as elephants or even camels. Those creatures wander around in the park at will. Today, you can still see many animals wandering in the park, and sometimes right beside human beings. There are many pelicans, swans, ducks, and birds in the park, and sometimes a dog that fancies a bean. And here comes another. The lane between the park and St. James Palace is called the Mall. It connects the Buckingham Palace to the west and Admiralty Arch to the east. I'm standing at the location where the prince and princess went out of the gatehouse of the palace and walked into the park over 300 years ago. The Mall is also the finishing point of London Marathon and often used in national celebration. During the Queen's 2002 Golden Jubilee celebration, over 1 million people packed the Mall to watch the appearance of the royal family on the balcony of Buckingham Palace. The layout of St. James Palace is exactly the same as 400 years ago. Charles II built a line of trees on the lane outside the palace where he can play the game called Pall Mall, or pêle-mêle in French, in which the players throw a ball as far as they can and target the ball to a hoop high in the sky. The line is named Pall Mall Street for that reason. In the 17th century, the land to the north of Pall Mall, which was also owned by the Crown, including what are known as Marylebone, Mayfair, Soho, and Covent Garden, were developed as the residential location for the British aristocracy. In the 19th century, the Pall Mall became the center of the Gentlemen's Club. Today, St. James Palace is no longer used as the residence of the monarch, but it still plays an important role in the royal family. Queen Elizabeth II gave her first speech as monarch here in 1952, and foreign ambassadors are still officially accredited here. I hope you find this video of the history of St. James Palace interesting and useful, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. I will walk around London and show you this fascinating city. Till next time.